What is up, everybody? Today I'm going to be talking about partners and specifically relationships. Now, this is not inherently a dating video, okay? I'm just gonna talk about relationships. I don't really like to talk about dating so much. Some things I talk about relate to dating because it's kind of a part of self-improvement, to be honest. It's a pretty large part even, and it's a large part of life, but it's not the only part of life. Now, I don't really like to talk about dating as in like manipulation games, tactics, whatever, these kind of things. But I don't mind talking about like relationships or things related to proper dating, if that makes sense, and just to improve the mindset of people and the way people think about this stuff, okay? That's basically what I like to talk about. I don't think all this like bullshit is really useful and all this toxic BS when it comes to dating, and yeah. Anyways, so I wanted to talk about in this video specifically, the title of this video I thought would be deep down I think most people want a relationship, okay? But what I mean by this is deep down a lot of people actually want a serious relationship with one high quality partner, whatever is high quality to them, right? But one partner that fits them, okay? Most people want this. I know a lot of people who swear that they don't want a relationship, a serious one. But this is a lot of these people are traumatized, whether it's men or women. They're traumatized from a relationship they were in with a bad person. So a lot of these people end up kind of like bitter and resentful because they had one bad experience where they invested a lot of time and energy and money, especially the man usually, who ends up investing and providing more a lot of times. They get burned once and they swear off and they become a player. That's pretty much what happens to a lot of guys, is they get burned once really bad and then they swear that shit off. They don't want to deal with it, okay? Same thing can happen to women, but in a different way. Usually it's more like they were used, or a lot of times actually, I'm just gonna judge a little bit. A lot of women are terrible at picking men, I'm not gonna lie, and they pick guys who are not good for them. And there's a lot of red flags which they ignore because of some aspect like height and looks. So they ignore all the red flags in terms of personality and narcissism and all these other things these guys might have, or that they're players. They ignore this, and then they get dumped later on by this, let's just say, easy Chad. And what happens is these girls become really bitter and resentful towards all men because this one guy that's really high quality, at least in looks department, used them as a player, and they maybe didn't realize it, or they just ignored the obvious fact, which was always obvious, but they kind of were delusional. So they end up in this situation where they're bitter and resentful and they don't want a serious relationship, or they pretend there's no good men. Now, this is kind of funny because I feel like men and women both end up in different scenarios in these same situations, which is they want a relationship deep down, like a serious one, but they got burned once and they don't want to try anymore, or they don't trust people, or so on. A lot of people end up in this situation, and I'm not surprised. Even you don't even have to have the worst person nowadays if you're going into a relationship, where you can still get dumped even by some of the most kindest people will still be absolute, how could I say this? Let's just say bad people. These good people who pretend to be good can switch up on you like one day and just out of nowhere dump you. That's pretty much modern society nowadays when it comes to relationships. A lot of times it's like you thought this was a good person and suddenly they switch up and they dump you, right? A lot of that happens. Now, the thing about the topic of this video, deep down people want a serious relationship. I know a lot of people who would definitely prefer to be in one. Not everybody obviously, but a lot of people would prefer to be in one if they could be. But they either cannot A, attract the partner they want yet, or 2, they are burned. That's pretty much the 2 options usually why people can't find what they want. some people just have signed off, obviously, from the whole thing in general. Even if a lot of people, even if they haven't been like burned, they've seen so much bullshit happening to other people that they just decide to sign off as well, because it's like, why even like bother going into this mess that is modern dating, basically. And I kind of understand that as well. I feel like this is kind of a problem where deep down I think is very hard to find a solution to, because this is individuals being individuals. You can't really change other people and how they act, so you can pretty much, only thing you can do for yourself is to try to just kind of weed through the garbage and learn what is a good person, what is not, what is a high quality person, what is not, and weed through the garbage till you find actually something good. And that's pretty much like modern dating in a nutshell, is weeding through garbage till you find something good. Or your other option is just to not try. That's pretty much how you find a good relationship. But this also, to find a good relationship also means you have to improve your own headspace as well as your physical side, so looks, and your mental state. Like, you have to have everything kind of in right condition for yourself in many areas if you want to find an actual high quality person, because it really depends what you're looking for specifically. And what is high quality to another might not be to another, so we all have different preferences and whatever. So that kind of depends. What do you want? What can you get? Etc. Where do you want to go in life? Like, there's a lot of things that can affect what kind of relationship you're gonna end up in or what you want. So I'm not gonna judge that for everybody and say what's the best relationship and what is a high quality person to somebody other than me. You know, I have mine, everybody has theirs, you know. But the topic of this video, I think, just is an interesting topic to bring out. And I think it's funny when I see this, like, people like say they don't want a relationship when in deep down they do, but they just can't find a person that they would actually want to be with, right? Or they're so picky they can't find one, or they've been burned and they can't find one. And that's kind of the thing we have going on. It's kind of a shame how many good people also get burned in this modern scene of relationships. It's sad how many good people get burned once and then they become worse people. I've seen that a lot. Like, there's a lot of people who had probably a lot of potential once they were a good person. You know, they were like an innocent good person, and then they maybe made the wrong choice once or whatever, and then they become a bad person. Not everybody does that, you know, some people can keep themselves intact, but a lot of people become worse people after they get burned once. They basically become players, whether they're men or women. A lot of these people become players. Some people actually do this consciously, and they don't actually, like, they might want a serious relationship, but they're actually burning themselves by picking the wrong people each time, even though they know it's wrong. But they're kind of chasing this one thing, which is like, I would say for women, a lot of times they just look for that one quality, which is usually looks and height, and that's what they go after pretty much. And then they realize later down the line they made the wrong choice, and it doesn't end up working out, and they go through that multiple times. Like, consciously go through it multiple times before they start realizing that they're dumb for making these decisions. And for men, it's kind of the same. Like, a lot of men might go after the wrong type of women as well, and they end up single each time because they get dumped or they realize they made the wrong decision. Like, a lot of people do that, and they end up getting burned and damaged, basically. And, you know, once these people who might have been good are now damaged, in a sense. And usually this leads to some kind of traumatization effect, which then ruins that person pretty much for a proper relationships a lot of times. I'm not saying you can't be recovered or something, but a lot of times, let's be fair, if you have too much experience, it usually doesn't lead to anything good. Like in a new relationship, like, experience is usually not a good thing. Usually it's a bad thing for men and women, I would say. because the more bad experiences you end up having in relationships, yeah, you might learn something, but I don't think that's really necessary to learn how to be in a relationship. You can do it with a good partner when you are in one, and a lot of people just end up getting burned, and I don't think that experience is good because it leads to traumatization, it leads to personality issues, it leads to psychological issues, disorders, it leads to trust issues and everything. So that's kind of the problem with, like, people deep down want these serious relationships. Not everybody obviously nowadays, but a lot of people do actually deep down want one, but it's impossible or very difficult to find people who are actually good for one. And especially the higher you go in quality of the person you're looking for, it becomes even more difficult. We're talking like probably percentages of chance of finding that person. Like, it's very difficult, and everybody's their own person and they have their own preferences and whatnot, and it can be very difficult to find like-minded people who also match what you're looking for in looks. So it just becomes a total mess, honestly. That's a lot of the problems why a lot of people deep down want to find somebody, but they can't find somebody because there's so many of these issues. And I've seen so many of these issues with people, and it's just crazy how many people get burned nowadays who are like good people. And it's sad to see, because these people would be like great people in relationships more than likely if they just found another good person. But there's a lot of also things going on where some good people sabotage a good thing, like a good relationship they could have had at the start. They sabotage it because they're not thinking clearly and rationally, and they sabotage what they would have had. Men and women do this. They sabotage the good relationship they could have had with a high quality person because it's not good enough, or they're bored or something. A lot of people do that as well, and it's like, this is like emotional immaturity, and it's also bad decision making, and just like then they regret it later on, like, oh, I regret rejecting this high quality person because he was actually a good person. Like, I could have dated him, and he would have been, him or her, and it could have been great. Like, that's really funny to me. It's like how people people just haven't developed themselves enough and don't have enough self-love to actually go into these relationships with a conscious mind of what they actually need and want and what is a good high quality person. Like, most people don't even know that. They like just go off of like kind of instincts and what is fun right now. Like, people don't think about stuff at all nowadays, I feel like. And that's a lot of the problems why a lot of relationships suffer, and why good people don't find each other, or even if they do, they still make bad decisions because they haven't developed themselves enough and they're not conscious enough to actually make good decisions because they haven't developed themselves enough. So you just end up with a lot of bad happening in the relationship world. And that's a lot of the times why you don't have good, serious relationships nowadays. It's because of all these issues kind of coming together, and this is what happens. But yeah, my point was, I think most people deep down want a serious relationship, but I don't think they can find it in this current modern world we live in, because the situation is kind of what it is, and it's a lot of combination of factors. You could also take social media into account, and it's just kind of a mess. I couldn't honestly tell you how to fix this because there's too many factors that you would have to go into to kind of fix it one by one. It's individuals, there's individual problems that need to be fixed, like personal development. There's social media, there's dating apps, there's maybe even society a little bit, and just like a lot of problems that need to be solved on different areas of facets of life that affect relationships. I would say a lot of this is mostly it's individuals, maybe social media, and that's mostly the issue, is the individuals and social media, I think. And in general, like a lot of this comes down to individual thinking and emotional maturity and just becoming the best version of yourself in a sense, and finding somebody else who's also very emotionally mature and mature in general, knows how to make good decisions, etc. Like that's very difficult to find. So that's pretty much kind of where the world is at. What is the problem? I would say it's mostly an individual problem. So how individuals act, but that's also affected by other things in society and how society is and the current world we live in, and that's affecting relationships pretty much. So that's kind of where we're at right now. But I hope it can change eventually. And for yourself individually, you can of course become better and try to find somebody who's also doing that. And that way you can maybe find something more stable than what we have nowadays with most people. I hope this gives you some thoughts. If there's a will, there's a way. Thank you for watching.